So you bought a bike for your toddler, but they seem to have no interest in learning how to ride it. Today we're going to be breaking down exactly what type of bikes suit toddlers at different ages. And stick around all the way till the end because I'm going to be sharing with you two of the biggest mistakes that I see parents falling into when it comes to learning how to ride a bike. So let's start out by talking about why learning to ride a bike is such an important skill and how this really benefits your child, not just for learning to ride a bike, not just for having that skill, but how it transfers into so many different areas that they'll need as they grow. Now, the first one is balance. When a child is learning to sit on a bike and then to actually ride the bike, depending on which bike it is as well, this will test out their balance skills in different ways. But this is something that really develops a child's ability to balance their body. Now, you might think that that's only for children that want to grow up and be gymnasts, but it's actually really not. In fact, some studies have shown a strong correlation or a strong link between balance skills in the early years of life, so before 5, and mental health in adolescence and young adulthood. The idea behind this being that when children have good balance skills, they are more confident and more body aware within a classroom setting, and then that they have more confidence and more self-esteem as they grow older. So balance is something we definitely want. Another skill that is really critical in learning to ride a bike is bilateral coordination. So bilateral coordination is basically the coordination or the two sides of the body speaking to each other. If you think about crawling, which I know is like one of these kind of hot topics when it comes to infant development or baby development, but crawling is a time where bilateral coordination really starts to come into play. Both sides of the body are actually working in different ways at the same time. And this really helps a child start to understand and get all of their body parts speaking to each other, and that brain-body connection is really being developed through crawling. Now, other skills that develop the same skill of bilateral coordination, which by the way, we use both sides of our body in almost everything that we do. Think about driving, think about writing, think about even eating and being able to stabilize the bowl as you eat. So that skill, bilateral coordination, is really important. Another area that we see this being developed is when children learn to climb ladders and when they learn to ride a bike. You see, as a child is pedaling with 2 feet and they're often steering with their upper limbs. So again, their body is learning to speak to each other and they are coordinating the movements of both sides of their body. Really important skill, and it's one that we don't actually have a huge amount of activities or things that we do in our daily life that really build into this skill. So bike riding is a great opportunity to be building up that bilateral coordination. So when we're looking at what bike we should be choosing for our child at different age groups, we're kind of looking at two important factors. The first one is your child's height and the height of the bike and how they fit together. And then the second one is how much balance skills this requires. So if you look at something like a traditional kind of BMX bike that you would see a grade schooler riding, there's no training wheels. They are really using their balance skills really well, and often those bikes are also quite a bit higher off of the ground. When we look at, for example, a 1-year-old, and yes, I think from age 1 we can start introducing push bikes. Of course, we want our children to already be very confident in standing at least, and so some ability to be stepping forward. So you just have to kind of gauge that around your child. But generally between 1 and 18 months, we can start to introduce some push toys, and a small push bike is a great option there. You want this to be not one of the ones that looks almost like a motorbike, but you want it to be quite a low down one. So, and also that the seat is quite wide. So this is giving your child a great opportunity to firstly learn to sit on something that's unstable, and then also get that movement of coordinating both of their legs, but in a very safe kind of position where they are close to the ground, where they are not standing on their tippy toes, but they can sit really firmly on that surface. Now, I do want to just tell you a little tip with these bikes. They often are the ones that if you open them, there's like a hidden compartment down in that bike. That is where if your phone or your keys or your wedding ring, anything goes missing, check that compartment. I'm telling you this from experience. There are often hidden gems in there. So that's the first bike that we would start out with for a 1 to 18 month old, and then we would move up to something that looks more like a little motorbike. This is something that I definitely had as a child, you might have as well. Or we can use those ones that are 3 wheels that can kind of clip together. So the clip together ones are obviously really great because they clip together. So if you have ever been in that situation where you are walking with your child, or maybe you have more than one child, and halfway through the walk nobody wants to ride their bikes anymore, and you end up being like this, I don't know, special kind of balancing act with all the bikes on you, you understand why it's important to have something that can clip up really easily. And actually it could even go in a tote bag, it can go underneath your stroller, or you can even hook something on the top of it and just hang it on a clip on your stroller, which makes it really, really practical. So when we are moving closer towards 2 and 3, these kind of bikes will be great because they're a little bit higher and the seats are a little bit narrower. We want that our child is already a very well established walker before we start doing these, and we want to make sure that when they are sitting on the bikes that they're not really on the edge of their tippy toes, that they have some stability to put a flat foot down on the ground. Now, if you feel like your child has mastered this and they're looking for a little bit more speed, the next option up would be a balance bike or a tricycle. Now, you probably read a tricycle road. You probably had a tricycle when you were younger, and these are great because it does develop that pedaling ability. But often we see today that balance bikes are more marketed to this age group of 2.5 to 3. That is for a couple of reasons, but the main one would be because they do work on balance so well. And this is something that a child will need as they're learning to ride a bigger bike. So I really like the balance bikes. This is something that we invested for both of our children in. Some of them do come with training wheels that you can kind of clip on for, say, the first day as they're getting used to the balance bike. But I would really recommend that you don't stick with training wheels on a balance bike because it kind of defeats the whole purpose of the bike. It also slows them down a lot, and that's the biggest fun of the balance bike really, is that it can go fast. So we want to be giving them from around 2.5, depending also on their height. You want to be checking that that balance bike is a comfortable sit for your child, that it's not again that they're standing on their tippy toes just to move forward. And we want to give them some opportunities to practice out learning to balance, because it is definitely a new kind of skill, before we take them on a long ride. So take a few strolls around the block just to get them used to it. But once they are, you'll see that they'll really enjoy going fast, going down hills, and just making you really catch your breath, as only toddlers do. And then generally I would say this, of course, is very dependent on your child. Some children are just natural born riders, especially if this is something that you do on a daily basis. But for the average family that is probably riding a bike maybe once a week or twice every 2 weeks, something around that amount of time on a bike, generally we say around age 4 to 5, children are ready for a more traditional type of bike with pedals and training wheels and something that is a little bit higher off the ground, what I would call a BMX. I'm not sure what you call it wherever you live, but let me know in the comments. Now, these kind of bikes, of course, are a little bit higher, so the age definitely helps, and we want that our child is much more coordinated in being able to pedal while balancing at the same time. Of course, even from a small push bike, you want that your child is wearing a helmet. We want to make sure that their head is protected, and you might feel that it's necessary to have some other kind of protective gear as you're learning to use a BMX bike. So 2 of the biggest mistakes that I see parents making when it comes to choosing bikes, and I want to encourage you to try and not make these, are firstly starting a BMX or a bigger bike or traditional kind of bike too soon, because this does require really more complex skills of balance while pedaling, and a lot more coordination and a lot more confidence in terms of being a little bit higher off the ground. When we start these too soon, which is what I see a lot of parents doing, they end up being with their training wheels for far too long. And then once you take those training wheels off, the balance component of riding, they've got the pedaling down, but the balance component, which is really the central component to riding a bicycle, isn't there. And that's why I prefer to use a balance bike in the beginning until that balance is well established, and then we can start introducing that BMX bike. So Try to gauge from your child how they are managing. If you don't have a balance bike and you're not sure which you should buy, try and borrow one from a friend or ask your neighbor if you can use theirs just to give it a spin and see how your child is managing on that before you decide to go straight to a BMX bike. We want them to be really confident on a balance bike before they start needing to also pedal at the same time. And then again, once you do start that big traditional type of bike, we want to have that the training wheels are only on for a short period of time. We don't want them to be riding those bikes for a year with training wheels. We want that balance has kind of integrated into the activity quite soon on. And the last mistake is that there are these kind of push bicycles that are they look almost like a tricycle, except they have a handle at the back. And often I see parents when they hit that stage with their toddlers around 18 months where their child doesn't want to be in the stroller anymore, so they're in and out of the stroller constantly, that parents move to these kind of push tricycles. And often what happens is in that they think that the child is actually learning to ride a bike because they are on these push tricycles. But what is used in riding one of those push tricycles is very different to the skills that are used when you are actually riding a bike independently. Yes, there may be pedals as well, but often they are in some kind of a harness. So their balance is very minimally challenged, and the pedaling that they're doing is often facilitated by your pushing. So it's not that they're independently pedaling and really like activating the muscles that are used in pedaling, but rather that they're learning that pedaling is actually pretty stress-free while you push behind them, so they have minimal resistance. So these kind of push bikes or these push tricycles, you might want to use them for some stage, but in your mind, don't think of these as a bike, think of them as a stroller. You're learning to ride a bike, you may be thinking about other skills that you are developing with your child, like swimming. Now, we have a video that's on your screen now, which is an interview that I did all about preventing drowning in young children, which is a must watch for any toddler parent. So I will see you over there.